My name is Malvin Maduku. I'm the project manager for the TLFC Teaching and Learning in Fragile Context project. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Okay, I'm Peter Timmerman. I'm the evaluative and organizational learning lead for Code, based in Canada here. Uko?
Yeah, and I'm Ugochukwu Okoye. I'm also based in Canada, and I'm also part of the evaluative and organizational learning team.
Thank you, Peter and Ugo, for that introduction. So basically, what I'm just going to go through is an introduction of the organization and the project. Can you confirm that you can see my screen? I don't know if the um,
I see it, but not as a presentation.
okay. Let me just slideshow from beginning. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, perfect. It's full screen.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So basically, the project that we are that is funding this grant call is a project called Teaching and Learning in Fragile Context. It's being implemented by the organization called Code, which we both represent, which we all, the three of us represent. Code is a Canadian organization. It's registered with the government of Canada. It's a non-governmental organization. It's been around for close to 64 years now, having been founded in the 1950s. It was basically founded by a group of educators, education professionals, book publishers, and librarians, primarily with the sole purpose of distributing. At that time, it was designed to, it was initially founded to help distribute books to developing countries, just to enable people to have access to reading and learning materials. So Code is, its vision is to for the world, for a world where every young person can pursue their education and realize their full potential as a literate and empowered and self-reliant citizen. And our mission is basically to enable student learning by increasing access to qualified educators and locally relevant, high quality learning materials. And this is really the core of what we do. Capacity building of teachers and even teacher training institutions, working with governments to develop locally relevant reading materials, books, getting the books into the hands of kids. That is essentially what we do. Why you might ask, why do we focus on education? As a non-governmental organization that was founded primarily to support the learning of students, we believe that development happens through education, and we believe change happens if we address the severe shortages of qualified teachers. This is something that we all understand, coming from the background of developing countries, and how the education system has been impacted by all these issues. So we believe that if we address the severe shortage of qualified teachers, if we put the empowerment of women and girls at the heart of our approach, and if we ensure availability of high quality, locally relevant reading material and learning materials, and we drive sustained change through systems level strengthening, then somehow development will happen. So this is our the essence and what we believe in as an organization, and this is what we're striving to do. So Coming back to the project that brings us here all together is the TLFC project. This is a project that is funded by the Global Affairs Canada, which is an arm of the Canadian government. You'd find that when you go through all of our projects as code, we have six. We're actually currently implementing projects in 6 different countries right now in sub-Saharan Africa. These include Mozambique, Malawi, Tanzania, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. You'd find that most of our funding either comes from the government of Canada, from foundations, private foundations, even including Code Foundation. We do have a foundation that also puts money into the work that we do. We also receive a lot of funding from private donors, but specifically focusing on this project, it's being funded by Global Affairs Canada, the Canadian government. So the TLFC project primarily is being implemented in 2 countries, 2 Western African countries, which is Sierra Leone and Liberia. But the project is really designed to improve learning outcomes, which include literacy, numeracy skills in primary students in these 2 countries through inclusive, high quality, and gender responsive teaching strategies. But you'd find that the idea of the research, it's embedded into this project, but not primarily focusing on these 2 countries, but hoping to pull in a lot of evidence around what is happening with in the education sector in fragile context, hoping that we can develop evidence bodies that can inform future projects within those specific contexts. So this project is focused on primarily 3 focus areas. So to support improved training of pre-service teachers, to increase the understanding and effectiveness of education decision makers in the application of these same strategies in their policies and processes, and to support applied research of quality teaching and culturally relevant reading materials in African refugee and IDP context. So just to sum it up, this is basically the project. This is the project log frame where we are looking at the ultimate outcomes, the intermediate outcomes, and immediate outcomes. Our focus as researchers will be primarily on the intermediate outcome, the 1800, which is to increased practice of using evidence-based research on gender equality, equity, inclusion for education programming in refugee and IDPs in fragile African context. So this is what brings us all together to this meeting, and I'll let my colleagues dig deeper into what this entails, and hopefully we can have a round of discussions and maybe points of clarification to help us as we proceed. Thank you. I don't know if there's anyone with any questions around what code is or TLFC. I don't want to take too much of your time, as we have already lost a bit of time.
I think if it's okay, Melvin, we'll reserve questions till the very end. So thank you very much for that excellent presentation of code as an organization and the overall project in which this research project is situated. Thank you for that. And just to quickly say, we're going to give a quick presentation as Melvin has done on introduction of the project. I'm going to introduce sort of the research agenda, what we're hoping to research, and Ugo is going to go through the process, which I think is what most of the questions will be about, the process for how we will select our research grants. And then this will hopefully take, we should be able to finish this easily by 9 o'clock, hopefully, in the next 15 or 20 minutes. And then we'll have about 25 minutes or so for questions and answers. And you can put those in the chat. If you want, you can put them in the chat as we're going along, or you can unmute yourself. So this is not a webinar, it's a meeting. So you can unmute yourself. You can show yourself on the camera. It's up to you. But we'll get a chance to all talk together at the end of the presentation. So please bear with us as we do this. I'm just going to share my screen a bit and just show a couple of slides on this, and then I'll hand over to Uko. Sorry, I'm trying to get this into presentation mode. There we go. All right. So just to start off with, at the start as well too, as an NGO, we're not a university. We're very interested in research, but our research is very much tuned towards practical applications. So we're looking for research that has practical applications to our work as code, but also particular to the broader education sector. And I'm sure as researchers, you have a similar goal, I think, probably for all your research as well, that hopefully it'll have some practical application. This application is eligible to all researchers based in Sub-Saharan Africa. We have another research program called Context Matters, which has been running for about 5 years now, which does grants every year. And again, we're using similar model. We're focusing on researchers who are based in Sub-Saharan Africa and giving them the opportunity for grants. A lot of international grants are received and administered in the global north. We're hoping to change that dynamic and create opportunities for researchers within Sub-Saharan Africa. Again, all researchers are eligible to some extent who are based in Sub-Saharan Africa. The research itself, however, has to be focused on either a refugee or an IDP or displacement context. I had listed here, these are sort of, anybody who's familiar with Africa knows there's multiple locations where there are refugee situations. These are the top 19. There's 19 countries with more than 100,000 refugees, but I noticed there's some people on the call from Malawi. I know there's large numbers of refugees in Malawi and even many of the countries here which are not listed. So just because your country or your place of research is not listed in these countries does not mean that you're not eligible. So the research, this is sort of a summary of our research agenda. I'm sorry if it seems a bit confusing, but it's a bit of a matrix. So this is our first call for research proposals. We will have a second call for research proposals, which will probably be a bit more fine-tuned, as in we may narrow the research agenda in our second research call. But basically, we did a literature review and an environmental scan, and we came up with 3 areas, categories, or themes in the research where we saw a need for research, and that is in access to education, quality of education, and education policy, all related to refugees and displacement. And then we have 4 cross-cutting themes: gender and inclusion, foundational literacy, teaching and learning materials and locally relevant reading materials, and teaching quality and accreditation. These cross-cutting issues are part of the TLFC program and part of the DNA of Code as an organization to some extent. So what we're looking for is research that somehow addresses the cross-cutting theme and, the themes coming from the literature review and the cross-cutting issues. So, and with a focus on teachers and learners. So it is very broad, obviously. The actual narrowing down of the research agenda is in the context of primary education in displacement and refugee contexts. again, these three themes are all sort of intertwined to each other: the quality of education, the access of education, and policy related to education in displacement and refugee contexts. Obviously, they all tie together. The access is related to the policy is related to the quality, and all around like that. So the cross-cutting themes we have now, I'm not going to go through each of these. These were actually in the call itself. Our foundational literacy, this is pardon the pun, this is foundational to code, is that we all of our programs were really focused on reading. The learning poverty that the World Bank has identified in much of sub-Saharan Africa is key to all of our programming. And so understanding what mother tongue, the impact of mother tongue, particularly in displaced populations, and this situation, the psychosocial situation that students and teachers find themselves in. How does that impact foundational literacy? Gender and inclusion. So how does particularly the situation of refugee and displacement impact girls and women, but also other forms of vulnerability that may come up, such as poverty and age and things like that as well, to be in disabilities. There's many areas of vulnerability which prevent inclusion in the education sector. TLMs and local are teacher and learning materials and locally relevant reading materials. Code has, for the last 50 years, focused much of its effort on ensuring that there are materials available, particularly supplementary reading materials that are culturally and locally relevant. And a big part of our research is understanding the role of these materials, culturally relevant materials, on the quality of education and even the access to education for some when it comes to language. And then teaching quality and accreditation is a huge issue in refugee contexts, where teachers are often moving together with the refugee population, or a refugee population has moved into an area where there are few teachers, or the teachers may not be qualified or ready to teach larger populations or populations that speak different languages. And then also thinking about accreditation. What is the impact of teachers moving from different locations, not being accredited in the locations where they've moved to, and how does that impact the access and quality of education as well too, and what are the policy issues around that? And so what we're encouraging research on is where there's an intersection between these cross-cutting themes and the other themes which have been come up, which is the access to education, the quality of education, and policy for education in these contexts. So the example would be for teacher accreditation. When populations are displaced and teachers are displaced, how does accreditation of teachers impact the quality of education, or how does it impact the access to education, and what policies impact that accreditation process as well? So all told, it is a very broad research agenda, and that is purposeful at the start to allow us in our first set of research grants to go the direction that the researchers feel is the most important. And we will certainly be going through a process of looking at all of the applications we receive, and that will sharpen our research agenda for the second research grant call as well too. So that's a brief overview of the actual research agenda. I'll hand over to Ugo, who will take us through the process of applying. And I'll stop sharing. Sorry, Ugo.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Peter. I'm going to go quickly over the process for submitting the application. So we are currently in the first process of the application, the grant application, which is a submission of proposal. So we've created a system where proposals could be received electronically, but I'm going to provide additional details on what is expected of you during your proposal submission and what we actually intend to expect from the proposal itself. So shortly after the proposal submission, the deadline, the next process will be sort of a process of reviewing the various applications that are received. So we'd have to go through the initial review of the application. Proposals or applications received that are incomplete would be excluded from this current phase. Now, criteria for a complete, what a complete application entails means application that has all the documents, which I'm going to list at some point in my presentation. An application that has all the complete documents and also all the relevant information that is needed of it. Then shortly after that, we would go on to the jury selection process. Now, so the application is not going to be reviewed by either of us at code. It's not going to be reviewed by code. We currently are setting up a jury panel made up of experts in education in emergency and also education in general. And these are drawn from members of the Africa Research Network, which is an expert network that was set up as part of the TLFC program. So this committee would be responsible for reviewing the application and making the final selection of those applications that are eligible for the grants. I don't know, maybe my colleague must have mentioned, but we'll be offering 10 grants. We'll be selecting 10 applications for the $20,000 grant for this current application year. So we are hoping to fund a total of 20 applications. Each would receive up to 20,000 Canadian dollar over the life of this project, which is over the next 3 years. Now, shortly after the review process, we would give or send out feedback to both successful and unsuccessful applicants. Now, the thing is, if you're not successful in this round of application, we would encourage you to look forward to the call for proposal for the second round of application. But as much as possible, we might not be able to provide all the feedback for every application we receive. But for those who reach out to us, we'll probably be able to guide them on how to, about if they were unsuccessful, on how they could improve on their next round of application. So once the feedback is received, we would assign the successful applicants mentors. Now, these mentors are experts in the field of refugee education and also education, foundational literacy. Now, these mentors would work closely with the selected or shortlisted applications to fine-tune their proposal documents. Now, we expect that given the time frame within which you're expected to complete the application and submit to us, it might not be as exactly or as excellent as we need it. But we want as much as possible for us to receive from you a very feasible and workable application that could be refined at some point. So very good applications, the most outstanding applications when selected would be assigned mentors who will work closely with them to refine the proposal as well as their budgets and all that. Then shortly after that is done, once we are satisfied with the level of or the quality of the proposal, we would sign a grant agreement with the researchers, and then the funds will be disbursed. Now, the timeline of each of the projects is for a maximum of 2 years, within which we expect to receive a midterm report halfway into the project, and at the end of the project, a final report. Now, payments won't be made at once. It's going to be made in batches. And that is part of what we would be discussing when the contract agreement is being signed. So I'm going to quickly run through the criteria for selection. This is just to give you an insight of what we want to see or what we consider a quality proposal. Now, the first thing, there are 4 criteria we're looking out for. One is intellectual merit. And the whole idea for us is to see the originality in the idea you're proposing. How original is the idea you're proposing? And secondly, how close it is to the issues raised, how close it is, or how does it address some of the issues raised in the research agenda. Now, a summary of the research agenda might not be available to you, but we've, as much as possible, identify the key subjects or the key themes or the key items in the research agenda in the call for proposal we sent out. So it's important that you read carefully the call for proposal to be able to understand the direction we want the research to go, so that your proposal would speak in that direction as well. Now, as much as possible, you might have various ideas to work on, but it has to be consistent with the various themes we propose. And this is the whole idea is for us to be able to be aligned with the objective of the TLFC program. Now, the focus has to be on refugees. Whatever methodology you're using, whatever direction your research will go, it has to speak to the peculiar needs of refugees and displaced population, education in displaced population. Now, the second criteria we'll be considering is potential impact. What practical and measurable impact will the proposal or will the research have? We expect that all the impacts might not be available, at the time of preparing the proposal, but as much as possible, if you could, mention measurable impacts, potential measurable impact, that would also count as a strong point for your proposal. Then we would also be looking at your research design and methodology, and in it, we'll be interested in how good is the research questions you're asking, how good is the time frame, or how feasible is the time frame you're proposing, how feasible is your budget, and most importantly, how are you able to access data, and are you able to access the data you need to conduct this research? It is important that as much as possible, your methodology should be feasible. Now, we'll also be looking at your budget and timeline. I will scrutinize that as well. And lastly, the qualification of the researcher. Now, as much as possible, we will be paying attention to the qualification of the researchers. And if you go over the call for proposal, we actually encourage people with a higher qualification, preferably a PhD, should apply. We understand that many of us might not have a sufficient background in education, but as much as possible, the research team should have a substantial level of expertise in the area of education, and preferably education emergency. That would also help to strengthen your application. So there are a couple of relevant documents that are outlined for you to submit. I'm just going to quickly pull up the application form. So if you go over to the application form, which is accessible from the call for proposal, is a link that is accessible from the call for proposal. It's very easy to complete. There are some basic information we need from you. These information, which are asterisks, must be provided, otherwise you will not be able to make a submission. So as much as possible, complete this information and provide adequate information or the complete information that is needed. Now, for the documents that is to be submitted, the first is the full the full proposal. We expect to keep your proposal to a maximum of 5 pages. Now, the template for you to use there's a template for you to use in preparing your proposal, which is contained in the application guideline. So we encourage everyone to make sure that they read carefully the application guideline to get all the necessary information they need to submit a good and complete proposal. So we expect that your proposal is limited to 5 pages, 12 points, probably New Times Roman or Calibri, or any legible font size, font style you would want to use. Now, in the application form, we want you to provide us 500-word summary of your proposal, your entire research, and that should include what you're researching, the idea you're trying to research on, why you're researching it, and how you're going to research it. We would want to see that in the summary, the one-page summary requested. Then for the budget, we expect you to prepare a budget and share with us. Now the templates, there's a template provided which is accessible if you click on the call for, let me quickly pull up my screen so that you could see me demonstrate this. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. Can you see the application form? I just opened it. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see the jot form there.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the application form. It has to be complete before. So for the points that are asterisked in red, you need to provide all those information. Otherwise, you probably might not be able to submit your application. Now, we don't expect you to complete your application all at once, and which is why there's a function for you to save and come back to it and continue the application. So for the documents we need, so for the budget, this is the budget template. This is the budget templates. As much as possible, make sure you do not alter the formulas and the budget because there's a formula. And what we expect you is for you to list the items you need to complete the research. If you need ethics approval, you state it and the amount that is needed. If you are going to pay for transportation to get to the research venue or to have a meeting with your participants, you state that. If you're going to have refreshments while conducting your focus group discussion or at the end of the focus group discussion, we expect you to list that. So for items is the items you need, the description of the item or what is the item is meant for. For the unit, how many of these items would you be needing? If you need transportation for your, maybe you're at the point of data analysis and you need transportation, if you're going to need it for 5 days, you simply write 1 unit of transport. Then for the frequency, you enter 5. Now that is the number of times you will be needing it. So unit is 1. If you need 2 cars, the unit would be 2. And if you need the 2 cars for 5 days, the frequency will be 5. Then you enter the unit cost of each item you need in local currency. The level of effort here is either whether it's going to contribute 100% to the success or completion of the research project, or is it going to contribute 50% or 20% or 0%? You indicate here. Then will this research activity or this item you've line listed be paid from the grant money? If it's not going to be paid if it's going to be paid from the money you get from code, you simply indicate yes. If it's not going to be paid from the money you receive, probably you have additional funding to support your research, you indicate no. Then you enter for us the budget in the local currency, the exchange rate. So as much as possible, we rely on the exchange rate from Oanda.com for various currencies. Oanda.com is where you can get it's the platform we use in determining the exchange rate. So once you enter the amount, it automatically gives us the equivalent in Canadian dollar. So as much as possible, do not alter the formulas in the budget. There are additional instructions on what should the budget cover and what it should not. And also the maximum amount that is meant to go towards covering or offsetting the cost of overhead. Now, this is the application guideline. As much as possible, make sure that you read the application guideline before making your submission. Now, going back to the relevant documents that is required for you to submit alongside your proposal, we would require you to submit your research budget. It's either you submit it in the Excel format, preferably in Excel format, but if you're unable to do so, you can submit it in PDF. But we would like you to submit in Excel so that if we have to refine it at some point, it will be easier for us to do so. Then we need the CV of the principal investigator. I know some of you have 20-page CV, but as much as possible, keep it down to 3 to 4 pages so that it's be easy for us to review. If you have more than one person leading in the research, you're free to submit. It's optional for you to submit the CVs of your co-researchers, but as much as possible, we need the CV of the principal investigator. So for the CVs of the co-researchers, it's either you submit it as a single document, as a single PDF document. If you have more than one co-researcher, you have probably 2 or 3, you attach all of them as a single document in the PDF and upload to us. Now, we would like to receive a letter of support, at least 2 letters of support from your hosting institution. One of the things we are looking out for is your affiliation with an institution, preferably a university. And the whole idea is to ensure that the process, that the research is being supported at institutional level. So we expect you to get a letter of support from your institution of affiliation. If you're affiliated with a university, we need a letter from that university. If you're affiliated with a research organization, we need a letter from that organization in support of the research that you're doing. If you also have a letter of support from your potential participants, that would also be needed. Mindful of the fact that you're working with a vulnerable population, it's important that these documents give us a sense that you have access to potential research participants. So providing these documents is very, very important for us. Then list of references. Now, the list of references are simply the references you consulted or the literature you consulted while making your application. It's also optional for you to submit this to us at this current stage of the application. So that is pretty much the entire process for submitting the application. Like I said, do well to read the application guideline so as to get adequate information you need to put in a very strong application. But if you have any other question, we would be able to answer them during this session. And if you cannot, feel free to email us at tlfc@code.ngo, and we'll provide the answers you need with respect to the application. Thank you. That'll be all from me, Peter.
Well, thank you, Ugo. And again, if anybody has any questions on how to get to Ugo, you're still sharing there just in case. Yeah, so if anybody has additional questions, tlfc@code.ngo is an email you can send, and both Ugo and I maintain that email, and we'll answer as quickly as possible. There are a bunch of questions in the chat already, Ugo, and we can probably answer some of those to start with. So if you have any additional questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and speak. Or you can put your hand up if you want, but you can also, I think there's a place to put your hand up somewhere on the bottom. Not sure where it is on Zoom. But first of all, I just wanted to address, there's a bunch of questions about eligibility. Some from Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi. I think people are asking, am I eligible for this? Okay. Melvin, are you sharing that? Those are some of the questions which are coming up. Yeah, so which countries are eligible? So again, the eligibility is not based on the country you're in. The eligibility is based on the context you will be researching. So having lived in Malawi, I know there's a refugee camp near Lilongwe called Seleka. if you're researching the refugee context in that refugee camp, that would definitely be an eligible context. So as long as the context involves some form of displacement, that it could be internal displacement, it could be displacement for a variety of reasons. I'll use Malawi as an example. Again, they recently had floods. People would have been displaced by those floods, and that's a form of displacement which would have caused folks to be in a different place and having to deal with the issues of education. Of course, if the displacement is just for a few days or something like that, it probably wouldn't be an education issue. So we'll leave it to that. If you're unsure, like if your context is what you feel might be you're unsure about, please send us a note and we can respond directly to your idea, I think. As opposed to you writing a whole proposal and then us saying it's not eligible. So on eligibility, I would encourage, if you're unsure of the eligibility, this is not like a lot of donor applications where there's only one, you write the proposal and then we determine if it's eligible. Please send us a note and we can have a one-on-one to find out if it's eligible. But if it's with a refugee or displaced context, it is for sure eligible. There was one other, I know there's some folks from York University and some folks from Laval University on the call. We've done some interaction with York University in the past as well. Ugo, I'm not 100% sure about this one, so I'm hesitant to respond quickly. For instance, from Laval, he mentioned that there would be researchers from Africa. Do we have a ruling on whether the lead researcher must be based in Africa? I think you would be eligible to get support from other researchers to create a team, but my thought would be that the lead researcher would have to be based in sub-Saharan Africa. Ugo, any comment on that one?
Yes, I think that was the preferred option for us. And this has to do with being able to have access or being able to manage the research, since the research is going to be done on the continent. This is the main reason why we preferred the lead researcher to be based on the continent. Of course, a potential partnership could be done with researchers based outside of Africa, but as much as possible, for the purpose of managing the entire research process and also following up on getting the data and all that, it's preferable that the principal investigator is based on the continent. But of course, it doesn't preclude those Africans who are studied, or even non-Africans who are experts in that field, to also collaborate with the research team. But as much as possible, we'd want the principal investigator to be based on the continent.
So I'm just recognizing that Mirko has his hand up, but I just want to quickly, I think Everest had also asked a question about some eligibility requirements are missing. Everest, if you can expand on that, or whoever wrote that one. You can either do it in the chat or you can unmute yourself.
Oh, hello.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for the clarification and the presentation. The information is very clear. My name is Donald from Malawi. I remember, if I recall, is it Ogo was talking about the team. My question is that, do you want to focus on those who have the PhDs only, that the one should be investigators? What about those with maybe masters in degrees, maybe with experience in research and publications? Could those people be also considered?
Yeah, as far as I know, we don't have an educational cutoff. Yeah, they just need to be qualified researchers showing that they have experience and are able to do the research.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just writing out what Peter said. So the education qualification is secondary consideration for us. The most important thing is how qualified you are. We know some
Yes.
masters graduates have stellar pedigree in research. So for us, it's a secondary consideration. Master's, PhD is fine. Bachelor's might be a bit of a challenge. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I think Mirko has had his hand up for a while. Please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think so my question was in a sense within the same theme of qualifications because I just heard Ugo say that like bachelor might be a stretch, for example, but when what I read from the proposal was an intent, a commitment to trying to obviously reach out and give access to to funding to those researchers with themselves refugee backgrounds, right, and in African contexts. And there is obviously a tension there between these kinds of backgrounds and access to tertiary post-secondary education, as you might well be aware, obviously, from your own research, your own literature review on this. So it opens up a tension there, right? That I think I understand that Ugo was saying it's a secondary requirement, the qualification, but there is a lot of tension there. That's what I'm trying to bring forward. There are, for example, I'm speaking from, my experience personally is with the Borderless Higher Education for Refugees project, coordinated through York. There are obviously a limited group of researchers on the ground who meet master's qualification. I think the majority would be within a Bachelor of Education degree. So if you can speak a little bit more about that. I know that the jury will not be yourselves, but how important is this qualification? Yes, you spoke of publications, and obviously that's another aspect. But just to get a sense of, for example, would an organization with researchers, based with PhD researchers based here, Bachelor of Education based in the camps, and master's students as well, that kind of structure, would that be a structure, for example, that could be successful in writing a proposal? That's sort of I guess that's the question that's kind of boiling in my head. Something of that sort, because I think Evaris had a similar question, because qualifications is obviously, it opens attention, let's put it that way, when we're thinking of refugee backgrounds, African context, right? And at the same time, qualifications academically, or even just publications, for example, knowing how the research world also operates. Just wanted to put that on the table.
Yeah, and I'll go at this first, Ugo, and
Okay.
and you can. Ugo has some more experience with this, having gone through Context Matters as well too, and Mirko, I think you've highlighted a really important tension, as you put it as well too, is that we are seeking to give opportunity to researchers who usually don't find themselves able to access grants. So, and because of that, sometimes these researchers might be seen as less qualified. But at the same time, we have the tension, we want it to be good research. We can't compromise the quality of the research. So for instance, a group of researchers who are based in a refugee camp would be fantastic to work with, right? Because they have lived experience. They're in the actual location, but if the research isn't good, we can't accept it. So, but I would say, so just to quickly put a little bit of my bias in this as well too. Obviously, researchers with lived experience and researchers who are based in or around some of these difficult contexts would be a great advantage, and I think would have an advantage in this process as well too. So we would certainly favor researchers from that context and within that context. And yeah, you're right. I mean, a master's, PhD, or bachelor's degree, it's really the quality of the research proposal, which is critical in this as well. So both for its practical application, but also for the quality of research itself.
Hey, you have. Okay, it's nice and the place.
So I'm just getting background sound from somebody. Maybe that's Pamela. I know you have your hand up there. Did you want to follow up with that question, Pamela?
Sorry, my network.
We can hear you, or we could hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, my hand, I didn't put up the hand, but I also wanted to ask about issues of disability inclusion in the refugee. If my research is just looking at how children with disabilities who are refugees are accessing and they are able to participate actively in class, can that one be considered?
No, yes, for sure. I mean, disabilities. So we're looking obviously at vulnerable populations in whatever definition that would be, whatever your definition of vulnerability would be. So it was highlighted in our literature review. We didn't include the entire literature review. We can provide that if folks would like to see it. The literature and environmental scoping that we did. We discovered, of course, that this is, if you look at, so as code, we take sort of an intersectional approach. If you know the intersectional approach to vulnerability, which includes all of the vulnerabilities that might impact folks. So thank you, Pamela. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Peter, for that. Just to add to what you said about the qualification of the researcher, I think one of the major consideration is the fact that at the level of master's or PhD, you gain substantial research experience, which probably might not be available to you at bachelor's level. That is the main reason why we kind of recommend that people with, but I understand, you know, the peculiarity of people in refugee context, which is why we also encourage collaborative efforts. It doesn't preclude having people who have this desired qualification. The most important thing, like I said, for us is how good is the proposal? Is it something that speaks to the gap that we seek to address through research? That is the major consideration for us at this stage. And there's a question from Harriet.
Yeah.
I don't know, Peter, would you want to jump on that?
Yeah, so I saw the question from Harriet regarding whether we could do research on university or tertiary education. So the quick and easy answer to that one, it would be no. Our focus is on primary education. In some cases, our focus on literacy as well. Some cases, literacy extends into junior secondary, perhaps, but our focus would be on primary education. Okay, so some people are asking to share the link. Just to highlight that for those of you who haven't seen it in the chat, Ugo has added the link again. You can also get to the link from the code website. It's a little bit hard to find. We were hoping to make it a little easier, but it is on our website. And you can link to it there as well too, which also links you to all the documents you need. And again, TLFC@code.ngo is an email where you can get any information you need. Ugo and myself both have access to that email, and we'll answer any questions. And we're happy to answer questions individually as well too. We know how much effort goes into these proposals, so we don't want you to feel like you have to try if you're not sure that what you're doing is going to be eligible or is going to be aligned with us as well too. We will not be able to rate your idea because that would be an unfair bias, but we can certainly let you know if you're on the right track or if it's an eligible proposal. Melvin, you were monitoring the questions. Was there any other questions that came up that you thought we missed?
No, I think that was everything. There's just one question. I think it came up again. When can we get the recording? and also the sharing of the slides. So yeah, I think yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we can send that out almost right away after the meeting. I think the recording takes a bit to finalize with Zoom, but we should be able to make that available. We'll probably just provide a link to the recording, but we can send the slides out to the entire. We'll probably send it to all those who expressed interest in the meeting. I know there was about 60 people who were hoping to be here. Many of them sent notes and asked us to send the recording to them. But yeah, I just wanted to say, and Melvin, I don't know if you want to close it, but I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time. My heartfelt apologies for the delay. We had an issue with our Zoom account. There was a change in the Zoom account which didn't allow us to get on to the Zoom on time, and that was our technical difficulty. We apologize for that. It's very unfortunate for those who waited, and especially for those who may have dropped off as well too. Great to see all these names and all the places that you've come from as well too. We're really excited about this research, and we're excited to work hopefully with some of you over the next couple of years. Melvin or Ugo, any last words? Other than that, I think we're down to 2 minutes left for our original time frame. From our original time frame.
I don't know. I think you said it pretty much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It was very informative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to making submissions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and good day.
Good day to you all.